Welcome everybody to our Revit MEP 2016 new features webinar. As Nate said, we will be kind of taking a brief little overview of some of the newer features in Revit 2016. And for those of you who are not familiar with Revit 2015 R2, the R2 upgrade, or for those of you who have not used that, I'll also discuss that a little bit, because all of the features that were introduced in the Revit 2015 R2 upgrade are also present now in Revit 2016. And there, like I said, this will be kind of a brief overview of the newer features. We will be doing some more webinars in the near future here to take some of these features and dive much deeper into depth on them, and really get into some workflows with what you can do with some of these new MEP features. So with that, let's go ahead and get started here. What we see now is kind of what we're going to be going through specifically in the platform and architectural enhancements, or basically the things that have been added to the entire Revit platform, applicable to everybody, as well as the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering enhancements. There's a lot of core kind of features that have been added to the program or enhanced in the program, and much like last year, we're looking at Revit has had some display graphic redraw enhancements that have been added, and basically what we get is improved performance when navigating a view. And we can use this progressive display option to interrupt the display of model elements as you move through the model. Also, this progressive display enhancement, or this progressive display option, it's a feature that's going to enable you to navigate the model smoothly and continuously. You're panning, you're zooming, you're orbiting around the view without waiting for the software to finish drawing elements at each step. So basically what we're looking at is you're going to notice that your models are running considerably smoother and faster while you're navigating around. We now have enhancements to allow us to rotate project north. This is what we can do now is we can rotate project north in our project with annotation without losing all that annotation, which is huge. I've had a number of clients run into this sort of problem when they're already well on their way to working on a project. They've already begun adding a lot of annotation. It turns out that they want to rotate their project north, and prior to this you couldn't do that without running into some serious issues with your annotation. So this rotation of project north enhancement, it's going to affect model elements and view specific detail elements, including text notes, detail lines, filled regions, revision clouds, and more. It's going to preserve the relative position of links. It's going to rotate decals applied to surfaces. This will not affect drafting views, callouts of plan views, or any other types of views. This tool is enabled for plan views only. So bottom line here is you're going to be able to have more accurate and readable documentation. You're going to see a lot of that. Another new feature here, this one is pretty useful. We can now right-click on a view in the project browser and open the sheet view. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into a Revit project here to show you that. So I'm just going to go to my 1-MEP view here. And if I right-click on any view that is placed on a sheet, I will see this option here to open sheet. We do that, and now we are dumped right out to the sheet that this view is placed on. Pretty small feature, but again, I think that we can find some usefulness there. one thing to note, if your view is not placed on a sheet, you're not going to see that open sheet option. Oops. We have some revision enhancements that have been added to Revit 2016. We can now control our numbering. We can add prefixes and suffixes. We can define custom sequences, and we can delete multiple callouts all at once. So what this means is you're going to see all these features in your sheet issues revisions dialog, and you'll be able to change the starting number for a numeric sequence to 0 or any positive number. Go to our revisions here to show you. The alphabetic sequence type is now called alphanumeric, where this used to just be called alphabetic, and it can now accept any custom sequence of characters. Again, here's where you would add your prefix or suffix if you wanted to, and that's also available for your numeric sequences. And this is where you would insert your sequence starting number. Each value in the sequence can consist of more than one character, and again, prefixes and suffixes are available for both of these numeric or alphanumeric options. We now are able to delete numerous revisions at once. So I can just select a couple of these, go ahead and delete those from the project. It's going to grab all of our tags and all of our clouds, and we're good to go there. These features are intended to improve your control over the changes in your project documentation and provide better performance overall. And this next feature is another feature that I think is really pretty useful and quite interesting for us mechanical folks. We can now create these selection boxes and use them to isolate elements, create unobstructed views, and visualize the context of those elements within the project. And basically what this is just a very quick and easy way to grab a 3D view of a selection of elements. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this little portion of my mechanical system right here. And if I go to my contextual tab here, over on the view panel, you'll see this new selection box option. If I click on that, this is what it does. Here's our new feature, the selection box feature. So again, this will just give you a very, very quick 3D view of whatever it is that you want to see, whatever the multiple elements are that you have selected. We could go ahead and just tab out through our entire system here. Oops, there we go. And again, click on our selection box option. And there's our entire mechanical system in one nice, easy to read view. And like any other 3D view, you have the ability to control it through visibility graphics or through applying a view template. Pretty slick. I like this one quite a bit. And finally, with our multidisciplinary or platform enhancements, we've just got some enhanced rendering abilities. Should be able to create quicker, better renderings, and you're able to choose between two rendering engines, NVIDIA Mental Ray and Autodesk Ray Tracer, which should give you greater precision handling and recognition of your energy analytical model. So on to the specific mechanical enhancements. This is the big one right here. I'm sure that some of you have heard of this. I'm sure that some of you have seen this. The big push with Revit MEP 2016 was the addition, or is the addition, of your Fab MEP content libraries and creating more full circle workflows between the Fab suite of products, your CAD MEP, your SMEP and your cam duct and bringing that back and forth from Revit to these products. Again, working to get it full circle. So basically what you are able to do now is use your FabMap libraries, component libraries within Revit, natively within Revit. And any functionality that you're going to get with these libraries should be available within Revit. And so the idea here is that you're able to model your mechanical elements within Revit up to LOD 400 level, and bring this to fabrication, again, natively within Revit. So you'll see here, just like these are your Fab libraries, so just like within Fab, you're going to be able to use your specifications that you create in your Fab libraries within Revit, and you can use these specifications to drive your design. You'll be able to set your segment length. You'll be able to control fitting and segment end connectors. Your materials. The specification also controls material gauge, standard segment lengths, and connectors applied to the fitting ends, so on and so forth. So you should be able to use these parts to more confidently model to better conform to your shop standards, and just in the end create better fabrication level documents. You've got your detailed fitting properties. These are template-based parts that enable detailed control of dimensional values, and the connector settings provide you with the ability to configure your end connections and basically define how those connections are going to work. Just like with in FabMap, you're going to have your catalog parts list available. If you have created these catalog parts lists for your FabMap parts, they will be there with you when you bring them into Revit. And these product entry lists, product sizes help provide modeled components that reflect dimensionally realistic parts. I know, especially as far as piping and plumbing, this is something that has been asked for by many of our clients, and here it is. We now have the ability to have fully realistic, dimensionally correct, fabrication-ready parts within Revit. And then again, like I mentioned, we will be going over this in much, much greater detail in future webinars and going picks and clicks and walking through how these things are going to be working and showing you the pros and cons of what is available. Finally, this is another big one that we have had great requests for, your hangers. You now can place hangers in Revit with your Fab content, and they will automatically be sized. They will, importantly, they will connect to linked models. You have the ability to connect them to either to your architectural model or connect them directly to structure. And these hangers will be used for, duct, pipe, cable tray, you name it, they are available. And again, this is Fab level content. With this content, you'll be able to locate penetrations, coordinate, run clash against. Again, trying to take some of that coordination out of the field and put it on your lab, on your desktop. We have a question here on this MEP Fab stuff. What happens to all of my existing content? Does it need to be recreated in this new file format? So let me explain that a little bit. And then this will be easier if I go open up our instance of Revit here. So what we have here is all native Revit family content. I've got my duct fitting. This is all out of the box native Revit content. What has been added to 2016, if I go to my systems tab, we now have this fabrication part button right here. Or if I go to my view tab, over to my user interface pull down, we'll see also this MEP fabrication parts window that's available. So I'm going to click on that. And whether I clicked on this new button in the systems tab or clicked on or went to the user interface pull down, it's going to bring up this same window here, which is our MEP fabrications part. So these are now, what this literally is doing is allowing us to access our Fab MEP library natively within Revit. So this is a whole different set of content here. And what we see in front of us is actually the out-of-the-box content, some of the out-of-the-box content from Fab MEP. So to try and answer your question, does it need to be recreated in this new file format? I guess it's a two-sided answer, because I would say yes, it does if you are not finding what you need. Whether that be out of the box from fabrication MEP, or whether that be on the internet from manufacturers who are making this content and making it available for you. Or my other answer would be it's a yes and no answer, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And you'll see here that I've got different services available for this project. I just chose to pull in some electrical services. This is going to be our cable tray or our conduit. We've got some more electrical service here. Looks like some junction boxes and such. We've got some supply air, return air, exhaust air services, and so I brought in some plumbing services as well. And again, all of these services, all of these groups within this services, this is all your native out-of-the-box Fab content. And then if we want to pull in more, I click on this settings tab down on the bottom. I've got to click on the reload configuration button here to kind of activate this window. And you'll see here are all of our services that are not loaded. And to the right are all of our services that are currently loaded into the project. And then I'll just give a little kind of brief demonstration of how this content actually works. I'm going to grab my supply service here. And you'll see that I'm literally dropping my Fab content directly into this project. So I dropped a piece of rectangular duct. You can see our properties available over on the left here. It's got the same offset properties, same reference level properties, but some of the properties are a little different. You have the ability to edit your part. Anybody that's worked in Fab MEP should be familiar with this window here. And we can take this duct and just stretch it out. And again, this is meant to be Fab level of detail. One of the features that really helps get it to that level is this optimized length feature. I click on this, and now you'll see that my duct is clicked into user-defined lengths of this material, which in this case is 5 feet. If we want to put an elbow on here, let's grab that elbow, drop it on. We can grab that elbow and rotate it as well. If we want to add some hangers to this, I'll go to my hangers group, grab the rectangular hanger, and we can just drop it right on our ductwork here, like such. And now, if we wanted to see this in 3D real quickly, again, we can use our selection box option, and this is what it's going to look like. You can see our hangers are going up to the deck here. And you can see our ductwork with the, again, Fab level of detail here. All of our seams and unions are properly represented. If I decide I want to drop this offset down to 10 feet instead of 11, our hangers are going with it. We've got some questions coming in regarding this fab content. Do we need to have fab software to have these libraries? I believe, I wish I was more certain on this one. I believe that you do not, since this is native Revit 2016 functionality. I don't believe that you have to have fab software. I know that when I came into this program and started playing around with it to figure it out, I didn't have to point it towards any fab library with my fab MEP installation. Everything that I showed you earlier under the settings panel, all of these services were immediately available. And here, I'm going to hit this reload configuration button again so I can show you. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. But this is all available out of the box with Revit. I didn't have to map it to my fab MEP installation or anything like that. Another question, does the content come in metric? Yes, it does. Up here in this pull down is where I selected my Imperial content library. There also was an option for a metric content library. So just like you are getting your family out of the box content with Revit, you're now getting this fab MEP out of the box content with Revit. Can you add, another question, can you add the duct fab content into the duct system families or piping? To my knowledge, you cannot. Both in physically interfacing this ductwork, this fab ductwork, to the native ductwork, I don't believe that you can physically interface the two within Revit. And also, a step further with your question, if you're talking about the system propagation as well, if you look at the properties of this fab content, there is no system parameter. So there's no, this content will not propagate your system data from Revit either. So for instance, this is my supplier system type. We can define that with this fab content. Where you would define that would be in your service. This is our supplier service. And that just really comes down to your fab MEP functionality being different than your Revit functionality in that regard. And like I mentioned, be on the lookout for some much more in-depth discussion on, especially on this content, this fab MEP content. I'm really looking forward to digging into it and showing you guys what we can do with this. Let's see. And just like so, the fab content that you have available within Revit, it's going to cover all of your MEP disciplines, your piping, your plumbing, your ductwork, your electrical, cable tray, wire trays, and so on and so forth. And like I said, this is all built with the intent for your features, for these fab features to be a full circle process. So your MEP fabrication level of detail elements coordinated in Revit can be written out for consumption by MEP fabrication products, and you can send the project directly to production in the sheet metal shop via CamDuct, as well as perform your cost estimation in fabrication estimate. So this is meant to basically kind of glue together Revit with the three fab MEP products like we talked about earlier. And now moving out of the fab portion of it, there are a couple other additions or enhancements to the platform that I'd like to show you as well. One of these involves our, lost my slide here. One of these involves calculation settings, basically to let you improve your Revit performance, let the program run faster by not calculating things that you don't need. So if we go to our type properties of any of our systems, you'll see that now there are options for performance calculations mode or volume only. When you set your calculations to performance, what this is going to do is it's going to suppress the processing of system level calculations with most duct and pipe systems. So you're still going to get flow, you're still going to get some calculations, but you're not going to get the deep calculations that you might not even be using anyways. Your volume only calculation setting, this is something that you might set for your fire protection, your vent, other classification systems where you don't need friction loss and all you might need is volume. So there is none, or excuse me, there is still an option, but any upgraded project will have the calculations parameter set to volume only for existing projects in which the calculations parameter was set to none. So again, bottom line here is these new settings will help you improve your model performance when working with large projects by disabling calculations that you don't need, and specifically for the Revit 2016 enhancements conversation, by enabling you to, in a better manner, enable calculations that you don't need, or disable calculations that you don't need. Our pipe flow units have seen a little bit of a facelift here. You now have the ability to set your flow in liters per minute, and basically support local flow unit requirements. This is something that Autodesk has seen many requests for, so this should make a lot of customers happy. We now have improved snapping behavior. One of the interesting enhancements here is now snap filters are based on zoom level. So when you're zoomed in further, fewer elements are going to be included for remote snapping. And when snap to remote object is disabled, snapping to connectors and linked files is excluded. Also, as far as remote snaps, they now include only the objects in the visible portion of the view rather than the view extents. So basically, I mean, what you're going to see here is just a lot of real small kind of enhancements to your snaps to hopefully remove some of those annoying kind of ticks that I'm sure a lot of you have experienced. So that kind of does it as far as the 2016 specific features. And now I'm just going to talk about a couple of the R2 enhancements that I've been using that I think are really great. One great R2 feature, R2 enhancement, I'm going to go to a lighting plan here to show you this, is now when you're circuiting, oops, that is not a lighting plan, excuse me. Now when we are circuiting, the panel that you're circuiting to will be remembered. So I'm circuiting these low voltage lights. Revit kind of uses some intelligence and some memory to say, let's put this on a low voltage panel. And since the last panel that I circuited to was LV1, we're going to keep going to this same panel. So again, if I start a new circuit here, you'll see that instead of saying none, Revit's going to remember the previous panel I went to of that specific voltage designation, which really just kind of streamlines it's a small addition, but it does streamline um, your circuiting. Another really great new feature from R2, if I right click in my project browser, I can search for whatever I want to find. So I will just start typing in, I'll search for lighting, and you'll see that we can go through our entire project browser looking for anything that contains what we search for. Another R2 feature that I'm a huge fan of, if I edit a family, again, it's a real small thing, but it just makes your life quite a bit easier when working in Revit. If I edit a family, now we have the option to not just load into project, but to load into project and close this family out. So I don't get these windows with tons of families open that I'm working on. I can work on it, I can edit it, I can load it into the family and close it all in one foul swoop. This feature is interesting. It's you'll see that there's a lot of real small enhancements made that kind of just making Revit a more complete platform in my mind. In your properties window, if you scroll down after selecting something and then deselect that element, the scroll bar stays where it is. If I select another element, the scroll bar is going to stay where it was, where I left it. So if you're editing multiple elements, you don't have to now, let's say I'm editing my supply airflow on a bunch of diffusers one by one, I don't have to keep scrolling down every time that I select another diffuser. Small feature, but very nice. And maybe the biggest one of them all, the most profound change of them all. Now if I go to link a Revit model into my project, finally our positioning is set auto origin to origin, whereas for the entire existence of Revit, the default link positioning was auto center to center. This is just huge because I can't tell you how many people I've known who have had issues with having their links incorrectly linked, i.e. having their links linked center to center. And I think that just about does it for our properties discussion here. We still got some questions up. One question, can the hangers be custom created or pipe supports? The answer is yes. This is Fab MEP content. You can go into Fab MEP and create all the hangers, all of the any of this Fab family content. You are able to create that to your heart's content within Fab MEP, and you can then bring that library into Revit. So to answer your question, you won't create this stuff in Revit, but yes, you can create it in Fab MEP, or customize, or edit, or whatever it is that you need to do. Another question for electrical content. Will it allow me to make my runs into 10-foot sticks of conduit with bends being accounted for as a single piece? The answer to that is yes. Again, just like how I'm able to take my ductwork right here, and I'm just going to copy a piece of this and move it over so I can kind of show this again. How I'm able to take this ductwork right here, stretch it out, and in Revit we would just have one solid piece of ductwork here. We have the ability with this Fab content to optimize our lengths, and it's going to cut it into predefined lengths. So in your case, it sounds like you want 10-foot stretches. Again, that would be something you would enter in the properties here. And I will go ahead and show, in my case, I'm going to get 5-foot lengths. Or excuse me, 10 foot is one or the other. But again, this is predefined by the user.